Hey everyone, in this video we are going to solve another popular machine coding round interview question, which is to create a autocomplete or type ahead kind of feature. So let's start with the HTML and CSS part to see how the UI would look. First we'll have a div which will be our main container. So let's give it a class of name search container. Then inside it we will have our main input element. We'll give it a placeholder. We'll call it enter the text here, and we'll give it a class as well called search input. Cool. After that we'll have another div where we'll be showing all of our suggestions, right? And we'll give it a class. Call it suggestions, right? Using JavaScript we'll be inserting all the suggestions returned to us by the API inside this div, right? But for now let's just to see how the UI would look, let's create some random suggestions here, right? And give it a class uh, search item, right? And let's give it a text like uh, test test one maybe, right? And repeat it few more times. So, right, yeah. Now if we run this, yep, now let's write the CSS for it. So first targeting the search container, we'll give it a width of 100%. We'll give it a display of flex, right? Flex direction will be column, and will align the items in center. So we'll give it a padding of 1.25 REM. Cool. Let's see. Yep, so everything is center now. Now let's style the search input. So search input, give it a height of, it's a 2.5 REM. Okay, and width 100%, and let's say padding of 0.5 REM. Okay, font size, we'll give it 1 point just 1 REM. We'll give it a border of 0 point, that's 0.6 REM. Solid, give it some color, and border radius of 0.25 REM, and outline of none. Okay, next we need to give the styling for the suggestions. So this, for this we'll also give width 100%, and let's give it a max width that the suggestion can have, depending if the text content inside it gets too large. So we give it a max width of, let's say, 26 REM. Okay, there's some error. Okay, semicolon. We'll give it a overflow y, so that, okay, we also need to give a max height for that. So max height of, let's say, 12 or 13 REM, right? And if the height gets too increased, we need to add a scroll bar to it. We give it a margin top of 0.3 REM, and we give it a box shadow. So let's 0.35, 0.4, GBA value 0.0.0, and 0.4. Okay, let's run this. Cool, looks fine. Now we need to style the each of the search item. Yep, so let's target the search item class, and for that we'll provide a padding It is giving, yeah. For padding, we'll give 0.6 rem. Okay. We'll give it a border bottom of 0.06 rem solid, and we'll give it a cursor pointer, because when we click on it or hover on it, when we click on it, we want this item to become selectable, right? So, and also on a hover, we want to change its background color. So background color will become something like gray, and the color will become remains black. Okay, so let's see this. Okay, there's some issue with the width of the suggestion. Okay, so our the width of our input element is too big. So for that, we need to provide max width to our search input as well. So let's provide it a max width for 25 rem, let's say. Now run it again. That's much better. Yep, the hover effect is not working. Why? Okay, I misspelled search, SEARCH. Let's see it again. So let's run this. Yep, it's working fine, and the scroll bar is also there. Okay, now let's move to the JavaScript part. So for now, I'll comment these suggestions that I added from my own, and we'll be getting these suggestions from an API. Okay, so let's write the DOM content event load event listener, so that our JavaScript runs only when the HTML parsing is done. So add event listener, and we'll call it DOM content loaded. Add it a function, right? Now here we need to get the input and the suggestions. So first we get the input. It will be document dot query selector search input, and then the suggestions. So const suggestions equals to document dot query selector, call it class name suggestions. Okay, now we get the input at the suggestions. We need to target the on change event, so that when we type something, we make API call. Okay, so for that I'll add an event listener. So dot add event listener will listen for the key up event, right? And I'll create a function called handle auto suggestions, right, which will be responsible for making the API calls, right? Let me declare this function here. So function handle auto suggestions, it will have event here. Let me just console.log event dot target dot value to just check if everything is working fine or not. So let me run this and clear the console, type something here. Yep, it's working. So afterward, we are also targeting to build a arrow up and down feature, right? So that when the suggestions are rendered, we will be able to use the arrow up and down key to select a particular suggestion, right? So for that, what I'll need the key, right? So I'll store it in a variable const key equals to event dot key, right? And I'll check if this key is equal to arrow down, or if this key is equal to arrow up, right? If this is the case, right, then we'll handle its logic later on. But first, if this is not the case, if it is a normal key press, then what I want to fetch the suggestions. For that, I'll create another function which I call get suggestions, and I'll pass the value to it. So event dot target dot value. Okay, right? And I'll create this function just above here. So function get suggestion and the search input, right? Here we need to make the API call. So we'll make the API call in the try catch block. right? If any error occur, we'll just console.log it, right? Else we want to make the API call, right? So for this video, I'll be using this dummy JSON API, particularly this search product API. For that, we'll pass the search input and it will return us the list of the products related to this particular input. Okay, so let me copy paste the URL. Okay, now inside our get suggestions, we'll write const res equals to await. Yeah, since we want to make API call, so this function will be async as well. So await here will make the fetch API call, right? And instead of this phone, we'll pass the search input value that we got. Search input. Now after that, write data equals to await result.json, right? Let's just console.log it to see what's the data we are getting. Okay, so let's run this, clear the console, right? And let me okay, clear the console. Yep, and let me write laptop. Okay, so let me increase the console. Okay, so what it returns is this. It returns data, then limit, and what we are interested in is this products key. It returns the products, and what we want to get the title of each of these products, and that title will be rendering as a suggestion. Okay, so let's do it. So for that, we'll create a list, and this list would contain data dot products, since all the values which we want are inside this products array. We'll loop through this products array and we'll get the title for each of these suggestions. So we'll say item and item dot title. Now we need to pass this list to another function which will be responsible for showing the UI, right? For creating the divs and these all these search item divs and render them on the UI. So I'll call this function as render suggestions and we'll pass the list to it, right? So let's create this function here, function render suggestion, and it will contain the suggestions list. Okay, now our task here is to render the suggestions, right? So we'll loop through the list. So suggestion list dot for each, right? We get the item, and now we want to create the this particular search div for it, right? So what I'll do, search item equals to create search item. It will be a function which will be responsible for creating us this particular div, right? And I'll pass the item to it. And once we got this, right, I'll write the function for this. I write the code for this function soon. Then once we got this div, what we want to add an event listener to it, right? And we'll add an on click event listener so that when user clicks on it, right, we'll write the code for it later on. What will this be for? So that when user clicks on one of the suggestion, the value of that suggestion should be filled inside the input box, and the suggestion, this whole suggestion div should be hidden now. And also that after once that is done, I want to append this search item to this suggestion. So suggestions dot append child search item. Now let's write the code for this create search item function. So function create search item, it will take the item, and all we need to do inside this create search item is to create this div, right? So let's create it, const right search item, it will be document dot create element, right? It will be a div tag, and to that what we need to provide, we need to add a class list to it, right? So search item dot class list dot add, and the name of the class here is search item. We'll add this class, Now what will be the text content? Text content will be this item that we pass to it. So search item dot text content, it will be item, and then we'll return this search item from here. Cool. So let's try to run this if it works or not. Okay, so let's run it again. Now let me type laptop. Yep, suggestions are rendering, it's working fine. But here you see that API call is made on every single search click, right? And we don't want that to happen, right? It's not very performant, right? To improve the performance, we should add debouncing here, right? So let me create a debounce function for it. So I'll write it here at the end, function debounce, right? It will take a function and a delay, right? And we'll create a timer closure above, and we'll be returning another function from here, which may be expecting the arguments, right? Inside here we'll first get the context. The context will be equals to this. Then if timer already exists, we need to clear it. So clear timeout timer, right? Else will store a set timer here. Timer equals to set timeout, right? A callback function and a delay. Delay will be the delay that was provided to this function. And inside this set timeout, what we want to make the timer null and then execute that particular function, and we'll call it using the call methods function dot call. We pass the context and all the arguments. Cool. Now we want to use this debounce function when we were adding the event listener, right? So instead of just calling like this, we'll wrap it inside this debounce function, and we'll provide a delay of, let's say, 300 milliseconds. Okay, now let's clear it, run it again to see how many API call is made. So I'll quickly type laptop. Okay, we got this error, cannot read undefined reading value. Yep, my bad. So instead of call, we'll be using apply method here because we are passing the array as an argument, right? So let me run it again. I'd clear it, quickly type laptop. Now you see only one API call is made here. Cool. So we have implemented debouncing. Now let's write the logic. What will happen if we select one of these options? Okay, so what should happen when a user click on one of these options, right? So this option should get selected, right, on the input box, and this whole suggestion box should be removed. So let me write a separate function for it. We'll call it handle click, right? Let's create this function here only, function handle click, right? It will take the event, and what we'll do, we'll update the value of the input. So input dot value will be event dot target, right, dot text content, right? We'll update the text content of this suggestion, and update the value of input by, and then we want to clear another method which will be responsible for clearing the suggestion, right? So clear suggestions, and all it will do is just clear the suggestion, right? So what we'll do, clear suggestions, and all we are going to do in this function is suggestions dot inner html. We will make it blank. Let's try to run this, right? Clear the console, type something. Now let's select the second option. Yeah, it's working. So now let's try to handle the arrow up and down key event. Okay, so first let's remove this console.log from here, right? And let's come back to this part when user press arrow down or arrow up key, right? So let's say I'm at this point, I type something, right? I get these options. Okay, and when I press the arrow down key, this particular element should get focused, and if I keep pressing the arrow down key, the next element in this addition should get focused, right? This is how it should work. And if I press the arrow up key, the element above that or the suggestion above that should become focused. That's how it should work. Okay, So for that, first we need a mechanism to find out what index or what element should be focused, right? So for that we need a variable, right? So I'll create a variable for that. I'll call it const current focused index. Initially, I'll give it value -1. I'll explain it why, and I'll explain how this current focused index will play a role in finding this focused element, right? So when I press the arrow up and down key, I want to update the value of this arrow index. And what it should point to? It should point to the index of the children of the suggestion box, right? So this suggestion div will have many children in it, right? This one, the first one will be at 0 index, second one will be at 1 index, right? Similarly, how it works in an array, right? So what I want this current focus index to point at that particular children of the suggestion list. So let's write the logic for that. Okay. So when user type the arrow up, so when user press arrow down or arrow up key, what we want. So first, let's write event dot prevent default, right? Then we want the current focus index. For that, I'll create a function. I'll call it update focus index, right? And I'll pass the key, whether it was arrow up or arrow down, right? These suggestions dot children dot length suggestions. Why is it not this suggestions? Okay, and it will won't be a const, it will be a let. Okay. Now, what will happen in this function? Let me write the function update focus index. It will take a key and it will take a max index. Why max index? Because when we are updating the focus index, right, when we are pressing the arrow down key, we don't want to we want to make sure we don't get outside the boundary. What does it mean to go outside the boundary? Either less than 0, right? Either less than 0 or more than the length of the suggestions, right? Or more than the length of the children of the suggestions. Okay. So for that, what we'll do, we'll check key is equals to arrow down. If it is an arrow down key, what should be the what should we return here? We should return math dot min, right? The minimum of two values, either the current focused key, the current focused index +1, +1 because we will be moving down when we press the arrow down key, or the max length, right? The max index -1. So either whichever one is minimum, either the current index, current focus index +1, or the last index of the last element suggestion div. Similarly, if it is not arrow down key, then it will be an arrow up key, and in that case, we want to return math dot max, whichever one is maximum. Current, sorry, yeah, current focused index -1 or -1. Okay. Now after that, once we get the updated focused index, we will create a class, right? We'll add a class name focused to that particular search item, and we want to update that class on that particular suggestion. So for that, I'll create a function called update focus, right? And we'll write the code for it now. Function update focus. So what we'll do, we'll create a class for it. We'll call it focused dot focus, right? And what will it have? It will have a background color of somewhat like blue, right? So this is the color which I'm picking for blue, and the color will be white. Okay, and I want to add or remove this particular focus class from the search items present inside this editions list. Okay, depending on the what's the value of the current focused index. So for first, we want to remove this focus class from all of these, right? From all of these suggestions. So for let I equals to 0 and I is less than suggestions, dot children dot length and I plus plus. And what we want to do for each of them, for suggestions at I, sorry, suggestions dot children at I dot class list dot remove, and we'll remove the class, this one, focused. Then after that, we want to check what's the value inside the current focused index, right? If this current focused index is greater than or equal to 0, right, that means we have some focused element, and current focus, it is less than suggestions dot children dot length. So it's within the boundary, right? If this is the case, what we want to do is suggestions dot children at current focused index, and we want to add the class to it. So class list dot add, and we want to add the focused class to it. Okay, so let's see if this works or not. So let me clear it, run it again. I press something, right? Okay, nothing is happening in arrow. I'm pressing arrow up key, arrow down key. Let me see why. Okay. So yeah, so the issue was I mistaked it. It's arrow down, DOWN. Okay, let me run it again. I, yep. Okay, so when I'm pressing the arrow down key, the next element is getting selected, and if I press the arrow up key, the above element is getting selected. Cool, it's working. Now I need to see what will happen if I press on the enter. Right now nothing is happening, but what I want, when I press enter, this particular selected item should get, its value should get filled in the input box, and this addition box should get cleared. Now let's write the code for that as well. For that we'll need a else if case, right? We'll need a else if case, and inside this else if, what we need to check, if key is equals to enter. So if enter key is pressed, right, if this is the case, what we want to do, right, let's create a function for it, handle enter key, right? Okay, let's create this function here as well, function handle key, handle enter key, and inside it what we want to check, if current focused index, let me copy paste it from here, if current focused index, that is not equal to -1, that means there is some value present in it, right? We have changed the value of current focused index. Then we want to update the value of input. So input dot value will become, right, suggestions dot children at that current focused index, and its text content will pick up its text content, and will update the value of input. And after that we want to clear the suggestions, right? So we had created a function already for that. This is, there it is, clear suggestions, and we'll call it here. Let's run it again to see if it's working or not. Okay, I press something. Okay, iPhone X, if I press enter, yep, its value is getting selected. Yep, cool. Let's add a few more modifications. Okay, let's write one last improvement here. Let's say user types something, right? And after that it wants to click somewhere outside the clear suggestions, right? Function should again run. That means this suggestions uh, div should get hidden again, right? So for that, what we can write at the end, we can write document dot body dot add event listener, right? We'll listen for the click event, right? And we'll have a function for it which will contain the event. Let's just console.log event dot target dot class list at 0. Let's console.log this and see. If I tap laptop, right, if I click somewhere outside, it's getting search container. If I click anywhere inside, search input or search item. So what we can do is we can check what's the value for this. So if event.target.class list at 0, if its value is equals to this search container, if that is the case, search container s, yep, if it is the case, then we'll call the clear suggestions. clear suggestions function, which will clear the suggestions. Let's run it again. Right, I'll type something. Okay, arrow up, arrow down, working fine. Right, if I click on the laptop, it's working fine. If I select any of the value, it's working fine. Let me clear it again and type phone. Right, we get these values. If I click outside, it gets hidden. Right, it's working fine. Cool. So this was the solution for our machine coding round problem. I'll provide the link for this fiddle in the description of this video if you want to check it out or play with it. Right, so that was it for this video. Thank you for watching. Yeah, one small issue I found was if I keep typing it again and again, yeah, it just keeps adding the value inside the same div. So the fix for that was really simple. Before rendering, before you start rendering adding the search items to the suggestion list, just call the clear suggestion method again. So if you run it again, right, if I type something laptop, get these values, and if I type phone, we'll clear it and show the new values. Cool.